Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I dive into today's review, do want to remind you if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a couple of ways. First, you can make a one-time donation by way of PayPal, or you can become a member of our Patreon. And there are links to those down in the show notes. And of course, don't forget, be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. There is an invite to our Discord server also in the show notes. Today, I am going to be reviewing Paranoia, the core book from Mongoose Publishing. This 144-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $49.99. If you order from Mongoose Publishing, you will receive the PDF absolutely free. If you want to just score the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $29.99. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the core book for Paranoia. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, the fine folks over at Mongoose Publishing were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, the core book is kind of aimed mainly at game masters because Paranoia isn't the sort of game that has a lot of mechanics to it. It's a very rules light game, at least with this edition. And you might find that the players will have a much more enjoyable time with their first mission if they don't actually understand exactly how the rules work. Yeah, kind of funny how it works that way. So I'm saying if you're a player and your game master has picked up Paranoia, maybe they haven't started running it yet, or maybe they're talking about picking up Paranoia, you might find that your first mission is not as enjoyable if you know how these rules work. I'm just saying it could walk on your buzz a little bit. First thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks work very hard to bring the perfect edition of Paranoia to life. And of course, we do have credit for the original designers of Paranoia. I had the first edition of Paranoia when it came out in 1984. In fact, I picked that up from West End Games. West End Games released a ton of fantastic role-playing games back in the day. And I remember picking up Paranoia, and I picked up some of the splats that started to come out. I just enjoyed the hell out of reading it. But like many role-playing games that I picked up in my youth, because at this point I was still in high school, I never ran it. I will say, to be very honest, I think it takes a unique game master to get the most out of Paranoia. And as far as the players go, there are going to be some people who absolutely despise Paranoia, while others will be enraptured by it. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we move on through the book. Let's talk about our action resolution here because, for one, as I mentioned, Paranoia is very, very rules light. This is a dice pool system. You're using 6-sided dice. We have 4 attributes. Each of those attributes will have 4 skills contained within. So we have as our attributes, we've got brains, chutzpah, mechanics, and violence. And then as an example for the skills under violence, we have athletics, guns, melee, and throw. What happens in the game is the game master is going to tell the player when they're attempting to do something, how many successes they need to roll. And a success is a 5 or a 6. What they're going to say is, okay, all right, I want you to roll this attribute plus this skill. You're always going to have a computer die, or in this case, it's referred to as the computer dice, even though it is a single die. And if you have any sort of equipment you might actually get additional dice for that as well. So as an example here, let's say as far as our attribute, we had 3 dice. Our skill, we get 2 dice. And then we've got our computer dice. And our game master says, okay, you need 3 successes. So it's something relatively difficult that we're attempting to pull off. And we would have all of 1 success. Now, we do have a currency available to us. It is called Moxie. You can spend 1 Moxie to change a failed die roll into a successful die roll. Now, an important thing to keep in mind with Paranoia, there is a lot of infighting between the player characters. There's a lot of backbiting. There's a lot of backstabbing. People are always looking to throw other player characters under the bus. So with that Moxie, you can spend Moxie on other people's dice rolls to change successes to failures or failures to successes. That is something to keep in mind. And there are different ways for you to earn Moxie also. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. Now, as far as character creation, we have 2 sides to the Paranoia character sheet. We've got the public side, and then we've got the naughty side. So the public side is going to have all your basic info, your character's name, what the team name is, what service group they're part of. So we could have like the military as an example. We're going to have all of our attributes as well as our skills. And we've got wounds, flags, XP, Moxie. XP is actually a social currency. It is also used to upgrade your characters if you were playing in a campaign. A lot of times it's in a one-shot, XP points determines who the winner was. And yes, I know, we don't have winners and losers in role-playing games. Well, we do in Paranoia, so keep that in mind. So on the naughty side, we are going to have the secret society that the player character belongs to. Membership in a secret society is treason in Paranoia. The friend computer is always looking for traitors. All player characters belong to secret societies, and they will all belong to different secret societies. Also has their mutant power. Of course, mutants are traitors and they're put to death. And of course, that also means that every player character has a mutant ability too. Pretty fun. One other thing I should mention as far as character creation, as far as the attributes, you're not rolling dice. You're not getting attribute scores and skill scores by a point buy or anything like that. You're actually going to go around the table and you will have somebody getting a 5 to add to something. Well, then the person next to them has to take a -5 in something, and you'll go around the table. So even if you're planning on just running a one-shot, it really does work better if you have all the players creating their characters together at one time. It's not a very long process at all. We also have buttons. So we have a treason button and we have a violence button. These are role-playing prompts for the player characters. If the player actually utilizes a button for something causing them to have a violent reaction or to try to do something that's considered treasonous, they will gain Moxie. If the game master actually introduces the button for that player character, there is no Moxie gain. As far as combat goes, once again, I have to point out this is super, super rules light. Game master never rolls dice. Only the players roll dice, and the game master looks for failures to take advantage of with these dice rolls in order to wound the player characters or cause obstacles, have the computer notice them. So as an example, we have our computer dice. if you roll, well, if you have a paranoia die, it'll have a little computer symbol on it. But otherwise, if you roll a 6 on your computer dice, then the computer notices that player character, which is not a good thing. That is never a good thing. So it's a success, but it is also brought the view of the friend computer upon that player character. In my opinion, the biggest selling point of Paranoia is the setting and the tone of the game. So it is set in a not too distant future in which all humanity is now cloned. So we no longer procreate. Humanity is grown in these clone vats, and each of the players is going to have 6 clones for their character. So that way you can have wholesale violence and mayhem and player characters buying the farm fairly regularly throughout a mission. Hopefully, the players won't get upset because more than likely the players have not grown overly attached to their player characters. And while it's not important for the players to understand the rules and how the rules work for Paranoia, it is important that they do understand a bit about the setting, what the premise is, the attitude as far as Paranoia goes, where, yes, these player characters, these troubleshooters who are practically incompetent. That's why the computer just rolls them out there because they know they are absolutely completely expendable. But they are all looking to stay alive and stay ahead. And if that means throwing other team members under the bus, well, more power to them. You'll find that a good amount of the page space is devoted to the setting and different aspects of the Paranoia setting, such as the secret societies, the different factions, equipment, so on and so forth. One thing I do appreciate about the core book here is that we get nice nuggets of information. We don't get just page after page after page about one specific subject. Now, some people will probably wish that there was more detail about some of the specifics here. But as far as just being a core book to get you started in the world of Paranoia, I think this covers the bases very, very nicely. We are going to wrap up with an example adventure. I think it's just okay. I wish there was a little more going on with it, especially the amount of page space that's devoted to it, that it's pretty much planned for about 2 hours, which I thought is fairly short. So that is a peek inside Paranoia, the core book from Mongoose Publishing. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. As I pointed out, Paranoia is a very unique role-playing game. And in my opinion, it's going to take a certain kind of game master to really pull it off. Because once again, you have to keep in mind, what is going to be your approach to this game world? Are you going to aim for silly? So you're looking at one long dystopian episode of the Toon role-playing game from Steve Jackson Games? Or are you going to aim for something more serious where even though you have these ridiculous situations, you don't necessarily play them for laughs. And that's where the humor and the satire emerges from. In my personal experience, I've found a lot of times with role-playing game adventures that really aim for laughs, you don't tend to gain many, just my past experience. So, like I said, myself, I would lean more towards the serious side of things as opposed to the silly side. I also mentioned some players will absolutely despise Paranoia because it's not the sort of game they want to invest time into playing. I completely understand that. And then, of course, you're going to have some other players out there who will absolutely adore Paranoia because it is so different and because it does encourage throwing your other players under the bus. So as long as everybody understands the premise, what's going on, and you're not going to have hurt feelings at the table, Paranoia can be an absolute blast. I am curious as far as a campaign approach to Paranoia. Now, I remember in the past, back in the West End Games days, there were campaign books for Paranoia. In fact, we even had overarching meta plots because that was kind of a thing with West End Games back in the day. I'm not sure how well you could pull it off with the perfect edition, but it is mentioned in the book that if you are going to run a campaign, that you might consider focusing on the players rather than the player characters. And I would completely agree with this because that way the players will enjoy the overall tale, all the missions as they tie together into an overall plot line without necessarily having to be intertwined with a particular player character or group of clones of a player character. I think that frees them up a little bit more to kind of go with the flow of a paranoia mission. Something to keep in mind. Personally, I really enjoyed reading through Paranoia. The core book from Mongoose Publishing, I think it pulls off what it sets out to do very, very nicely. I do think that the rules light approach really does work well because Paranoia should be more of a narrative game as opposed to a game that you're going to be delving into the minutiae and crunch, especially as far as combat goes. I also like the fact that the game master never rolls any dice. That helps because you already have the game master causing all these problems for the player characters in the first place. If they were rolling dice, it would really feel like the GM is ganging up on the players at the table. All in all, very nicely done. Once again, Paranoia is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I certainly like it. I'll be honest, I don't know if I could pull it off as a game master and get the full extent of the Paranoia experience out there for my players, but I would certainly try. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Paranoia, the core book, an 8.5 out of 10. Once again, what it sets out to do, I think it does admirably, but this is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. All right, that is it for this time out. If you liked the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you will not find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.